Rasul says, "Man qara'a 10 ayatin min awwali Surah Al-Kahf usima min fitnat al-Dajjal." Whoever recited 10 ayat from the beginning of Surah Al-Kahf is protected from the fitna of Dajjal. So the first 10 ayat in particular will give us a lot of insight about the fitna of Dajjal. In the very beginning of the surah, before we even get into the story, what does Allah say? وَيُنذِرَ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا مَا لَهُم بِهِ مِنْ عِلْمٍ وَلَا لِآبَائِهِمْ كَبُرَتْ كَلِمَةً تَخْرُجُ مِنْ أَفْوَاهِهِمْ إِنْ يَقُولُونَ إِلَّا كَذِبًا. These warn, and the Quran came to warn people who say Allah took a son. They have no idea what they're talking about. Nor did their ancestors have any clue what they're talking about. The word that comes out of their mouth, what word? That Allah has a son, is a huge deal. It's not a small crime to Allah.
We're talking about the end times, which some evangelical Christians believe are now.
And most of that 30% is about the times we're living in, the end times. So, and you say, well, why would God say so much about the time we're living in? It's going to be the worst time in human history. We see what's happening in the world today.
The idea that the return of the Jewish people to Israel is one of a series of events that will trigger Jesus' second coming.
Jesus is telling us that the rebirth of Israel is a sign of the end, not just a sign, it's the super sign.
According to this theology, God will reward those who help Israel and punish those who don't.
So Christianity definitely falls into the area of idolatry, utterly and completely. And the Jew, in fact, is called upon to give his or her life rather than convert to Christianity, which many thousands of Jews did throughout history. Islam has a very unique status, and again, this is an area of idolatry, in that the Islam is definitely not idolatry. Muslims worship one God, absolutely worship one God.
The Arab world and Islam and even Muhammad and those that put the Quran together after Muhammad, that you can really trace this movement, this body of people, this large group of people, back to a man named Ishmael, who was a son of Abraham. Verse 5, he brought him forth abroad and said, "Look now toward heaven and tell the stars, if you are able to number them." And then God said to Abram, "So shall your seed be."
Right. That's a promise we cannot forget, because this was to Abram. Verse 4, "It will come out of thy bowels." In other words, the seed, the genetic makeup was going to come out of it. That was the only condition. This is what it's going to be. It's going to come from you, and it's going to be like the stars. That was the only condition given in chapter 15. Go on here. Verse 10, "And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude."
When I read this, when I read your book and I read this again, my mind went back to Genesis 15, where God promised to Abram that his seed would be like the stars.
Yes.
And I'd always thought of that only in the terms of Isaac.
Yes.
But now what's happening here is the angel of the Lord is talking to Hagar and repeating that promise.
Yes, to her.
To her, and saying, "I will multiply your seed exceedingly, and it will not be numbered."
We see the split in the promise right here.
And it is high time that our evangelical Christian brothers and sisters, who have become the best friends that the state of Israel has in the world today, the most stalwart friends, the most reliable friends, the most loving friends, it is high time that they have their Christianity enriched through a thorough understanding and a thorough knowledge of the Jewish Jesus.
By the way, my people, forgive me for being arrogant, are the Jews and the Christians together.
And Christianity was able to turn around a few short generations or centuries later, when the Roman Empire became a Christian empire, and to utilize the imperial armies of Rome to engage in mass killings in order to further and better the position of Christians in the world.
In context?
Say that one more time.
In context?
Okay.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تتخذوا اليهود والنصارى أولياء بعضهم أولياء بعض ومن يتولهم منكم فإنه منهم إن الله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين.
In context? In context?
So the first 10 ayat in particular will give us a lot of insight about the fitna of Dajjal. In the very beginning of the surah, before we even get into the story, what does Allah say? وَيُنذِرَ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا.
But more recently, there is also a third group that is becoming more and more influential here and throughout the Middle East: American evangelical Christians.
This is Jerusalem. World history as we know it is going to end right here.
Greg Laurie is an evangelical preacher, one of several who meet regularly to advise President Trump. They are the leaders of megachurches with tens of thousands of members. And many of them, including Greg Laurie, preach a belief called Christian Zionism.
There are close to 70 million evangelicals in America versus less than 14 million Jews worldwide. And given that roughly 80% of these Christians support Israel, that makes American Christians the largest pro-Israeli voting bloc in the world, about 4 times the size of the Jewish community on Earth. There's a lot of money behind the Christian Zionist movement. This church behind me, Cornerstone, is one of the biggest supporters of Israel, not just among Christians, but in the world. The pastor here, John Hagee, has raised an estimated $70 million over the course of his ministry. What's dicey about Kufi is that a good deal of their money for Israel is spent on buildings and organizations in the Israeli settlements. These are massive Jewish communities built well within Palestinian territory, in violation of international law.
هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى. He it is who has sent his messenger with guidance ودين الحق and with the religion of truth ليظهره على الدين كله, that it may prevail, overcome and supersede every other deen, bulldoze them all. وكفى بالله شهيدا. And enough is Allah is a witness to this fact that is going to make his deen to prevail with you or without you. But we human rubbish, I said all of you, you and me, Allah is giving us that opportunity to serve his deen. Do a prophet's God and earn a prophet's reward. Allah has given you the answers, solution to the problems. Help them, and by helping them you help yourself. Change them and you'll change the world. Change them. People who can worship anything, everything, why won't they will not accept Allah Bari Ta'ala? Why won't they? The reason is you don't open your mouth. You know why you don't open your mouth? You're too terrified. You are suffering from a host of inferiority complexes. Get them out of you. Open the Quran, read the Quran, and let Allah speak to you.
Hey, boy! Are you too afraid to fight?
You come armed with a sword. But I come in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel.
من ذا الذي يقرض الله قرضا حسنا فيضاعفه له وله أجر كريم قل يا أهل الكتاب تعالوا إلى كلمة سواء بيننا وبينكم ألا نعبد إلا الله ولا نشرك به شيئا ولا يتخذ بعضنا بعضا أربابا من دون الله فإن تولوا فقولوا اشهدوا بأننا مسلمون